On this edition of 1+1 Overseas Adoptions, actor Deborra-Lee Furness wants Australian authorities to loosen the red tape. Also, our man on Afghanistan. And is eco-fashion sustainable? Hello, I'm Jane Hutchin. Welcome to the program. Coming up, Australia's Special Envoy to Afghanistan, Rick Smith, and designer Rebecca Gorman. But first, celebrities like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie have popularised overseas adoptions. Actor Deborra-Lee Furness says authorities here should be making it easier and faster for Australians to adopt overseas. The actress has been a long-time adoption campaigner, but her critics argue that the bureaucracy is needed to protect the children. Deborra-Lee Furness is speaking with Kerry Ritchie.
Well, Deborra-Lee Furness, welcome to 1+1.
Good to be here.
Now, you've said in an interview in the past with the ABC that you live a normal life, that you work and your children go to school. Is your life still normal?
See, I don't know what normal is. It's normal for me, just like, what your life is normal for you. I guess, no, we're not exactly cookie cutter lifestyle. We travel a lot, but I'm like any other working mother, I think, that, I try to balance it all and juggle it all.
Now, you've adopted 2 children after having some miscarriages. How did that come about? How did the process
I was always
work?
going to adopt. It wasn't that we were going to have a child and adopt a child, so it wasn't a big leap. But that's not why I'm involved in speaking out about adoption and the orphan crisis. I think I would have totally been involved in this regardless, because it's not about the adoption. It's about, we have 163 million orphans and it's a crisis. What are we going to do about it?
You speak about the process, how difficult it is for couples. Was it difficult for you?
No, because I did it in the United States. And I did look into it here, and I was frankly appalled at how difficult it was and how negative it was. It takes way too long. I think with anything, people say, but you've got to do all the due diligence. It still does not mean that it has to take between 4 to 10 years. It's ridiculous. And I think we really need to put energy into this and do it a lot better than what we're doing it.
Some people might say it might have been easier for you because, you're a celebrity.
A lot of people say that too. Being a celebrity, it's easier to get reservations in a restaurant. It's not easier to adopt a child. We jump through the same hoops. We do all the due diligence. And frankly, when we adopted, we were not celebrities in America. So there you go.
You've spoken about Australia being anti-adoption. What do you put it down to? What do you believe the reasons are?
Well, I think when you put down anything like that, it's kind of fear, I guess. And who would like to make that call, especially with local kids, like that a parent has lost its rights, like in the foster care system. A lot of these kids stay within the foster care system, and because it's not in the best interest of the child, they're hoping that the parent will get its act together, even if mum's a crackhead or dad's in jail or whatever. I think we have to consider best option for the child. So I think it's hard, it's complex, it's not easy. I also think from past practices with the stolen generation, I think it's scared off a lot of people. I think we need people who have leadership and knowledge to really work out what is the best option for the child. I think that always has to be number one. But and I'm not just making up it was an anti-adoption culture, because Bronwyn Bishop did the inquiry and found within the system it's pervasive.
So obviously you've visited some orphanages and some countries overseas that have a lot of orphans.
It's terrible.
Yeah. What can you describe it to me? What's it like out there?
To be in an orphanage and look at these children who are just, there and don't have someone that loves or cares about them, it's heartbreaking. Every child needs a family. Every child needs to know that they have someone that they can rely on. The statistics are, I think, every 3 months in an institution, that child loses a month of development. And they try to make it as great as it can be, but institutions is not where a child should be. Orphanages are terrible places.
There was a piece done recently out of Ethiopia by the ABC, by the Africa correspondent Andrew Gagan, and he won a Walkley for it, and it was called Fly Away Children, and it looked at some of the adoption agencies coming in with Christian credentials and what was described as harvesting of the children, where they would come in. You're a campaigner for more international adoption. When you hear stories like that, though, do you see the other side?
Of course, but this is where, like with anything, you have to have accountability. And the governments from both Ethiopia and, say, if the other country was America, they need to have accountability police. There has to be accountability. They have to monitor, like anything. They have to make sure that everything is done properly. I mean, that is child trafficking. But then I get cross too, because a lot of governments will hide behind that and not be proactive in doing something. So, that is child trafficking. Do something, fix it, don't allow it to be. But what is the contingency plan when you shut down a program like we did? We shut down Ethiopia, and I understand that there are issues, but what's the contingency plan? These children, once a program shuts down, I don't know how long it shut down for, I think it was a year. These children, their lives are drastically affected. So if you are going to shut down a program, have a contingency plan. Work faster. I mean, every day matters for these kids.
What do you say to the argument that I heard an African leader once say, don't take our children, help us to fix our country and invest in our country?
Absolutely. This is what I'm saying. I want to have an international summit. I want great leaders to come together like this, because a lot of the reason why there are so many orphans is because of poverty. And yes, if we can lift people up, I work with a global poverty project too, which is with great synchronicity, because if there is less poverty, there's going to be less children. I'm not pro-adoption. I wish there was no adoption. But I'm saying, what do you do with the children where there is no other option? We have to do it, and we have to do it well. But yes, absolutely, if we can have an infrastructure within these countries that are poverty-stricken to help families stay together, that's my number one priority. That I would do before anything else. But when we're talking children may be dying or be taken as slaves or sex trafficked, my gosh, when there's a loving family, say in Melbourne here, that would take a child that otherwise would be walking the streets, please, can we do this well? And can we have services in place to support the adopting parents? Pre- and post-adoptive services, because these kids that come from these war-torn countries are going to have issues. They're going to have issues of abandonment. We need professionals that know how to deal with that when you have them in country. And this is part of what a better adoption system should be.
What's your feeling about what Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt have done? Because, of course, their family has made it quite sort of trendy, and a lot
It seems so ridiculous to me to use that terminology. I mean, it's,
A lot of people, though, who are celebrity obsessed see what they're doing and perhaps...
But I think they're giving out a good message. I mean, they're not out, playing at parties. They've decided to share their good fortune, their wealth, and their capacity to love with a whole lot of kids.
What has it meant for you to be able to adopt? How has it changed your life?
It's the opportunity to share a life with this extraordinary being that is your child, that you have to shape them and nurture them. And frankly, being a mom has taught me more than anything else in my life. So yeah, it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thanks very much for joining 1+1.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a road well travelled from a high school teacher in Western Australia in the 1960s to his current role as Australia's Special Envoy for Afghanistan and Pakistan. Rick Smith's stellar career as a diplomat and public servant has taken him from Honolulu to Mongolia. He served as ambassador to China and then Indonesia. As he was about to leave Jakarta, the Bali bombs of 2002 struck as he was about to take up his new role as Secretary of the Department of Defence. Rick Smith officially retired from the public service at the end of 2006, but is still highly sought after in academia and as an advisor to the government. Rick Smith, thanks so much for joining 1+1. You're Australia's Special Envoy for Afghanistan and Pakistan. What exactly does a Special Envoy do?
Well, there's a group of special envoys, about 20-odd countries in the world have appointed people with this title. We meet 3 or 4 times a year to review progress, to formulate policy approaches, to get the messaging straight. So that's the first thing I do. Secondly, I help out as I can in Canberra for the Minister and the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I visit Afghanistan, talk to people in the embassy, talk to our people on the ground there, come back with ideas that I put into play in Canberra.
How worthwhile is it to encourage the holding of elections when coalition powers like Australia have already said that we won't be staying the course until full democracy can be achieved?
I think it's very worthwhile. We've got to grow that attachment to democracy, and it is very strong, surprisingly so, given the absence of history of democracy. Notwithstanding all of the adversity they face, millions of people do turn out to vote. The focus tends to be on the low voter turnout. The surprising thing is that 40–50% or whatever it is of people do vote, and they seem to like doing so.
There's been a lot of talk about troops being withdrawn from Afghanistan in the coming year, and really to finish the operations there within 4 years. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, it's a conditions-based drawdown that will take place through a period of what's called transition from now till the end of 2014. The focus then will be on transferring responsibility for security and for civilian government to the Afghan government and the Afghan security forces. And that will be conditions-based. If it goes well, there will be a faster drawdown. If it goes not so well, if there are challenges that we don't yet foresee, then we'll stay and maintain our presence as it more or less is. But of course, at the end of that period, that's not an exit in itself. At the end of that period, there'll still be foreign forces there, including, as the Prime Minister says, Australian forces. It's just that instead of taking the lead role, they'll be taking a role behind the Afghan security forces.
How confident are you that politicians will listen to advice such as from people like you, for example, if the conditions aren't really ready yet?
They listen, because it's, my contribution is relatively